Hey, first grade friends, we've been missing you. We are ready to do the last chapter, Chapter 9 of Winter of the Ice Wizard by Mary Pope Osborne. When we left off, the two white wolves had been surprisingly turned back into Merlin and Morgan, and the Ice Wizard got his sister back. Chapter 9, Wisdom of the Heart. "Merlin! Morgan!" shouted Annie. Teddy and Kathleen cried out in amazement. Annie rushed to Morgan and hugged her. Jack was filled with giddy relief. Hi! Hi! "Welcome back, sir," Teddy said to Merlin. "Thank you," said Merlin. He looked at Jack and Annie. "And thank you for turning us back into ourselves." "We didn't know you and Morgan were the wolves," Annie said. "We were following you so we could help you," said Morgan. "But the wizard told us that if you caught up with us, you were going to eat us," said Jack. "Really?" said Morgan. They all looked at the Ice Wizard. Standing with his sister, he stared guiltily at Morgan and Merlin. "I feared that if they got close to you, they might discover who you were. But I will do no more harm, I promise, for I can see clearly now." The wizard looked back at his sister, and his blue eyes shined with joy. "You can see because you have had your heart back, not just your eye," said Morgan. "It was not only your eye that was missing, it was also your heart. We see with our heart as well as our eyes. And now, perhaps you can find the wisdom you were seeking from the Norns," said Merlin. "For wisdom is knowledge learned with the heart as well as the head." The Ice Wizard nodded. "Please find it in your hearts to forgive me. Use my sleigh to take you safely back home." "Yes, indeed, we must leave now," said Morgan. "We've been gone from Camelot for far too long." "The next time you come to Camelot, my friend, you must come as a guest," said Merlin, "not as a thief in the night." "And you must bring your sister also," Morgan said to the wizard. "Indeed I will," the wizard said. Merlin looked at Jack, Annie, Teddy, and Kathleen. "Is everyone ready to leave now?" he asked. "Yes, sir," they all said together. Merlin looked at the staff of strength in Jack's hands. Oh, sorry, I almost forgot," said Jack. He handed the heavy staff back to Merlin. As soon as Merlin held the staff of strength, he seemed more powerful. "Let us be off," he said briskly. Merlin and Morgan led the way out of the throne room, and their red cloaks billowing behind them. Teddy and Kathleen followed, and Jack and Annie hurried after them. Just before they left the room, Jack and Annie glanced back at the Ice Wizard and his swan sister. They were deep in conversation again. "They haven't seen each other for years," said Annie. "They must have a lot to talk about." "Yeah," said Jack. He couldn't imagine not seeing Annie for years. "Come on, let's go." He took her hand and pulled her out of the throne room, through the front hall, and into the cold dawn. Jack and Annie followed their 4 Camelot friends to the wizard's sleigh. Everyone climbed in. Annie sat at the rudder. Jack stood at the front. He pulled out the windstring and untied a knot. The sleigh rocked forward. He untied another, and the sleigh started moving very slowly. The sleigh was heavier than before, so Jack quickly untied 2 more knots. The sleigh bolted across the snow. "Stand fast," said Teddy. As the sleigh swished through the dawn, Annie turned to Morgan and Merlin. "I have a question. Can you tell us what the giant looks like? The frost giant? Merlin smiled. There is no frost giant, he said. What? Said Kathleen and Teddy. Sure there is, said Annie. We heard his breathing. He nearly froze us to death, said Jack. At night, the wind often swirls through the hollow hill like a cyclone. You experienced one of those storms, said Merlin. But what about the Norn's story about giving the wizard's eye to the frost giant as a gift, said Jack. Many ancient peoples believe that the forces of nature are actually giants or monsters, said Morgan. The Norns are the last of their kind. They hold to the idea that the frost giant is a living creature who haunts the hollow hill. In truth, though, the frost giant never accepted their gift because there was no frost giant. Jack shook his head. We believed what the Norns believed. They told us we'd freeze to death if we looked directly at the frost giant. And we believed what the wizard told us too, said Annie, that the wolves would eat us if they caught up to us. Perhaps people often try to convince us that the world is scarier than it truly is, said Morgan. Right now, though, the world didn't seem at all scary to Jack. Everything was calm and bright. Soft rose-colored light was breaking through the morning clouds. Today is the first day after the winter solstice, said Morgan. Today, the light starts to return, and the days will grow longer. Jack turned to look up at the sun. He caught sight of the treehouse sitting on top of a snowdrift not far away. Jack tied a knot in the windstring. He tied 3 more, and the sleigh came to a stop at the foot of the snowdrift. Merlin looked at them. On the winter solstice, you showed great courage, he said. You endured storms and terror and extraordinary cold. You reunited the Ice Wizard and the Swan Maiden. And perhaps most important, you retrieved my Staff of Strength. I thank you. Sure, Jack and Annie said modestly. You have done much for the kingdom of Camelot on your last 4 missions, said Merlin. On your next adventure, you will have a mission back in your own world, in real time, not in the land of myth and magicians. We will call for you again soon, said Morgan. Great, said Annie. Jack and Annie climbed out of the sleigh. They looked back at Teddy and Kathleen. I hope you will help us with our next journey too, said Annie. Teddy smiled. If we all work together, we can do anything, aye? Aye, said Jack and Annie together. Then they turned and trudged up the snowdrift. At the top, they climbed into the window of the treehouse, and once they were inside, they looked back again. The sleigh was gone. Aye, Annie said softly. Jack picked up the small gray stone from the floor. He pointed at the words Frog Creek in the wizard's message. I wish we could go there, he said. The wind started to blow. It blew harder and harder, and then everything was still, absolutely still. Jack opened his eyes. They were back in the Frog Creek woods. No time at all had passed while they'd been gone. It was almost twilight. Snowflakes fell like tiny feathers outside the treehouse window. Annie shivered. I'm cold, she said. Here, take my scarf, said Jack. He pulled off his scarf. No, you need it, said Annie. No, take it, I'll be okay. Jack put his scarf around Annie's neck. "What are you going to tell Mom when she asks about your scarf?" he said. "I'll just tell her the Sisters of Fate took it as payment for telling us how to find the eye of the ice wizard in a hole in the hollow hill," said Annie. "Right," said Jack, laughing. "We'd better get home before dark," said Annie. She started down the rope ladder. Jack followed her. As they stepped onto the ground, Jack, remembered the wind string. "We forgot to give this back." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the string. "I guess Merlin's magic took the sleigh back to Camelot." Jack and Annie looked at the string for a moment. "Untie a knot," Annie whispered. Jack took off his gloves and untied a knot. He held his breath and waited. Nothing happened. He gave Annie a little smile. "I guess in our world, it's just a piece of string," he said. Jack put the string back in his pocket. He and Annie started walking over the snowy ground between the trees. As they walked, Jack looked for Teddy and Kathleen's footprints, but they were completely gone. Jack and Annie moved out of the woods and down their street. They saw Christmas tree lights sparkling in people's houses and candles shining in windows. Their boots squeaked as they crossed their snow-covered yard. When they got to the stairs of the porch, Jack stopped. He stared in astonishment. Annie's red woolen scarf was draped over the railing of the porch. "I don't believe it," said Jack. "I do," said Annie. They hurried up the stairs and Annie grabbed her scarf. "Look!" She held up the scarf to show Jack. There was a tiny picture woven into it, a picture of him and Annie and the two white wolves. Jack was speechless. "Cool, huh?" said Annie. She gave Jack back his scarf. Then she tied her scarf around her neck. She tucked the part with the pictures under her jacket collar. The front door opened, and a delicious smell wafted out from the house. "Hi," said their mom. "Cookies are ready. Come on inside and get warm." Alrighty, friends. Sad news. That is the end of the winter of the Ice Wizard. But good news, there's a sequel. Here's a sneak peek at our book for next week. It's called Carnival at Candlelight. Here's your sneak peek. History, mystery, and magic. Merlin has a new mission for Jack and Annie. Save the Grand Lady of the Lagoon from a terrible disaster. To find her, they must travel back in time to Venice, Italy, on the night of Carnival. But before long, they find themselves thrown into a rat-infested dungeon. How will Jack and Annie save themselves and the Grand Lady too? Does their new book of magic rhymes hold the key? Find out in Magic Treehouse, number 33, Carnival at Candlelight. And as always, so good to touch base with you, and I so enjoy being your teacher. Take care, and I love you.